Welcome to Creating a Family. Talk about adoption, foster care, and kinship care. May is National Foster Care Awareness Month, and I'm thrilled to bring you this interview with Kathleen Bierce that talks about what foster families experience and how we can come around them to strengthen and support the work that they're doing. Kathleen is a licensed therapist, foster mom, and creator of Fearless Fostering, where she supports foster and adoptive parents with practical tools, emotional guidance, and trauma-informed strategies. She blends her own real-life experiences with her clinical expertise to help families feel steadier, more connected, and less alone. Welcome to Creating a Family, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad to have found you. Your organization is called Fearless Fostering. So what does that mean to you right now as you're building that business and the work that you do with foster families every day?
I love this question because it's different than when I first started it. I first started sharing on Instagram under the name at fearless_fostering in 2020, early 2020, before we knew anything about the world that was going to happen in 2020. And I was already sharing online as a therapist. Prior to that, I was sharing resources for women, for mental health, for anxiety. And then my foster care journey, it was something I started sharing just bit by bit because I really believed that A, it was important for me to kind of process through what our family was experiencing. And B, a lot of women, and especially women, were coming up in my DMs and saying, can you share more about your foster care journey? We're thinking about foster care, or I am in foster care trenches right now and I don't have any mental health resources. What would you do in this situation? So that's when I said, like, maybe I should shift this to just focus on foster families because it was so important to me, still is. So when I started, I was like, oh, the name Fearless Fostering sounds really good. Like alliteration. Who doesn't love that? And then, it's what I wanted to embody was that we can do hard things and we can do them without fear. And the more I was in the journey, and the name was just like, okay, fearless is how I want to show up, and I can, but it's something I have to work towards and for, because so much of foster care feels uncertain, unknown. So it was kind of the both of like, this is how I want to embody my foster care journey. And I believe it's possible, but I also know that realistically for most foster parents, including myself, this maybe feels like a misnomer on a lot of days.
I appreciate that honesty and that transparency. What is it about your fostering work that makes it so profoundly worth it for you, for your family, and for even the work that you do in addition to fostering?
Yeah, I think, for us, we heard the story of a 19-year-old woman who was speaking at this conference that had nothing to do with foster care, my husband and I. And she had disclosed that in 2 of the 3 foster homes she grew up in, she was sexually abused. And we just held each other's hands and kind of like both had tears in our eyes and didn't talk about it for the rest of the day. And we got home and he was like, what do you think about the conference? And I was like, I think we need to do foster care. And he was like, yeah, me too. And like months later, we started the journey, started the classes. And I think that was it. It's our why. It's like, we can be a safe home for kids that need it. And for goodness sake, like foster homes should be the safe place, right? And so if you're hearing about stories, unfortunately, where sometimes that's not the case, it's even more like jarring of like, well, we have the safety, the love, the space to offer a kid or however many in need that we can open our hearts and home to. So was our why initially. And then through our foster care journey, like once we knew, we had said like, we're going to open our home to as many kids as need us through foster care, up to if 2 need permanency through adoption, we would adopt up to 2 because we had 2 biological kids already. And that was just what we felt like we could handle in our home at one time. And so when we closed our home, it just happened that the first 2 kiddos that came to us were full bio siblings that both needed permanency through adoption. So our foster care journey looked very different than we initially expected that it would, but we still wanted to hold that boundary. But when that close came, I was like, there's never going to be a time in my life where I don't want to be doing this work. I am so passionate about coming alongside foster parents and the families and the kids who are in the system and navigating it. There's so much to unpack with that I think the work's never going to be done. The need's never going to not be there. So I can never, like, in good conscience, step away from it.
That's profound. I appreciate you sharing that. I think that so many foster parents who might be listening right now, or those who are interested in fostering who might be listening right now, can kind of find a lot of hope and a lot of, oh, I can do that too. in everything that you just shared. And I appreciate that as your why and what kept you sticking to it. We would like to thank the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption for sponsoring this podcast. The Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption believes that together we can ensure every child has a permanent, loving family. Read stories of youth and families touched by adoption, including adoption from foster care, and access resources for parents, caregivers, and child welfare professionals at davethomasfoundation.org. I would love to talk about the unexpected joys that your family experienced in the foster system and in the foster process, because we don't often hear enough about the joys in this work that we do. As you said, it is hard work. It's heartbreaking and heart-heavy work, but I want to talk about some of the joys. Before we get into the challenges, what are some of the unexpected joys that you guys experienced?
I love that question so much because it's so important. There is so much heaviness to any hard thing that we step into, right? But there's so much joy to be found in foster care. And you're right, it doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. One of my biggest joys was seeing my older bio kids embrace the journey and with us. Like there were so many times where my oldest was in third grade and my second was in kindergarten. At the time we opened our home to foster care and to our first placement, our son, who was 6 months old at the time. And goodness, like the wisdom that came out of the kindergartner and the third grader in those moments, they're like, we had court today. We're like, we're always going to tell you what we know in an age appropriate way, but there's so much that we don't know. So we just have to all kind of hold that together. And I remember one day we came back from court and it was just, I think it had just been continued. Like it was just we thought something was going to happen or something was going to move and it just didn't. And it just felt so like defeating. You're just like, what in the world? We have to live in this uncertainty again for this maybe 6 more months or whatever. And my kindergartner looked at me and he was like, Mom, he was like, God loves him so much more than you do. And he's going to be okay. And I was like, oh, what?
Okay.
You are 6. Like, how did you just say that to me? And that was a joy. And then even ongoing, I would say like, they would ask questions sometimes like, well, why can't like their mom take good care of them right now? So we would have those conversations. And for me, the joy was also in the difficulty of explaining like, look, you're not coming against some of the most hard, difficult things in the world right now because of where we live, because, of choices that Dad and I have made. But it's important that you know that they're there. It's important that we don't stay away from hard things. We step into them. That's what we want to do. And we want to teach that and model that from a young age. So that was also a huge joy. And then, of course, the joy of parenting these beautiful, beautiful gifts from God that you're just like, who knows how long you'll be here? But every day that I get to parent you is such a gift. And it really is. Like even, I had a C-section with my second son and it was so difficult. That wasn't my experience the first time giving birth. And I was like, oh my word. Right after it happened, I was like, I could never do this again. Like that was just so difficult. And I remember like changing my son's diaper on his first birthday, being like, I would do that 600 more times just to have you. And I'm like, That's how I feel about foster care. Like I really would do it 600 more times to have the kiddos in our home. And I know that's the experience of so many mamas that I talk to as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that really resonates. I think when we push ourselves to do the hard thing, even when it's an unexpected hard thing, the joy we get on the back end of it is indescribable.
Totally.
Yeah. So when things are feeling heavy and you're working with, resource parents and foster parents, how do you help them reconnect to their why?
Yeah, that's the most important thing. And I kind of will just ask them that question off the bat. I'm like, okay, tell me why you first decided to do this. Something in you clicked. What is your story? And coming back to that is usually the most powerful thing that they can kind of get recharged by. But then I also I try to remind them, I'm like, look, it's so easy to, when we're fostering, make our whole identity about foster care. And that's just that is going to burn us out and drain us so quickly because we were a person before we started fostering, even before we became a mom, if that was our story. So what is it about who you are, even as a child? What did you love to do? How can you in some small way reconnect to that? And I'll just ask them questions like, what did you love to do when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up when you were like 9? You know what I mean? Just kind of reconnecting to who you were. Because I think even just especially as women, we're we're just go, go, go. We're grinding through the day. And especially as foster parents, it's very typical to hear that. And I felt that way too. But just to remind ourselves that we're way more than that. And we're going to show up way better to the kiddos in our life and to everyone else if we are able to say, I need to reclaim a bit of myself back from this journey. That's not selfish. It's just how I can show up in a way that is not resentful. It's not bitter. There's so many things outside of my control, but what can I do? If I wanted to, like my example is like, I always ask people, and this is from a book called The Artist's Way, but it was a question was like, what other 5 lives would you live if you could live any other lives? So I was like, okay, that's such a cool question. Mine would be like a Broadway singer, even though I can't sing at all. Like I would want to be like a pioneer on the prairie or like I don't know. I think I even said like a 1950s housewife because I don't know why. Those just really appealed to me. It doesn't, but just whatever it is. I wanted to be an author, like a YA author at some point. I'm like, okay, so what is that really saying about me? Okay, I really like creativity. I like creative arts. And where is that showing up in my life right now?
Right.
It's not. So how can I make a little bit of space? I don't have to ditch my career. I don't have to ditch my family.
Yeah. You don't have to close your house to fostering.
Right.
Exactly.
You can do those things along the way.
Yeah. Those small, healthy habits that you insert into the day can help you reconnect with your why, but also reconnect with yourself.
Exactly.
I love that. What challenges are you observing that will catch a foster parent kind of off guard the most? Things that they just really did not expect to be a challenge when they were fostering?
Yeah, there's a few. The main one is just how quickly a case can turn a different way. So I think, and this was something that I didn't expect, and it happened to us with both our son and our daughter. It's like, okay, it's looking like it's towards like the goal is concurrently reunification and adoption. So that they're still trying for reunification, but adoption's on the back burner. Then all of a sudden, swoop, like a relative out of state is like, nope, we're going to go ahead and try for the kids or take that. You know what I mean? It's like, and you're like, okay, that's cool. They're bio family. That's in essence a good thing. But you're like, it's just the swiftness with which it happens.
Okay.
It's so unexpected and so jarring for so many. You think this is going to happen this way, even though it's uncertain. Our brains love certainty. Our brains love a story that is true. Right. And so that's just how we're wired. And foster care just is like, nope, that's not an option. Like, it will confront you right away with how quickly things can change and how little control you do have. And another one is that there's like, when you show up to court, I mean, there were court dates where major decisions were being made about my kid's future. And I wasn't in the room. I was in the waiting room. Strangers were making the decisions, a judge who had never met them, who didn't know us, who didn't know the bonds of our family or the specific needs of our kids. And that just felt like, what is happening? That can be super, super tough.
So are those also the same areas in which you see foster parents becoming easily depleted or overwhelmed?
Yes, I think the twists and turns and the back and forth is the main one. That's like, okay, we have a date for our TPR trial, or we have a date for when reunification is going to happen. Then all of a sudden, they're literally asking you within a few weeks' notice, hey, sorry, that's not going to happen anymore. Reunification is not going to happen. Are you willing to adopt? We need to know right now. And it's like, what? Like we were preparing for this thing. And now all of a sudden you're like, hurry, make a decision about a life, right? Like it's so heavy. It's just so heavy.
And I would guess too, that the weight of making that decision on behalf of a child, especially a child, like if it goes that way from reunification, switching over quickly to adoption, a child that you were previously preparing for reunification, and now all of a sudden you have to prepare them for adoption.
Right. Exactly. And depending on the age of the child, that looks very different. And maybe they knew that they were going to reunify, or maybe they didn't. And what is that? I mean, just so many things.
Right.
Yeah.
So related to that, what do kind of we on the outside maybe of fostering misunderstand about the emotional weight that foster parents carry?
Ooh, that's like one of my favorite questions ever. And I think it's such an important one, because my main answer to that and my main experience of that was the weight never goes away. That I think that like there's so many willing, kind, loving people that came around us in the beginning when we first got our son, came to our door, and it's exciting to them. There's a baby here. We obviously know the weight of it is like someone doesn't have their child right now, and that's terribly difficult and sad. But we hold all of that. And then they're like, let me do a meal train for you. Let me, how can I pray for you? What can I do? What can I bring you? And it's not like we need things, but just like, even just just people to understand that emotional weight is something that we carry every single day. It doesn't go away. It doesn't stop being difficult once we're in a routine. Like, it's difficult for sure in the beginning. You're recalibrating and finding your new normal. But I remember talking to my therapist during my foster care journey, and I was describing this very thing to him. And he said, it's kind of like a pebble in your shoe that you always are aware of. And I was like, that is such an apt description of what I feel. It's never something that I'm not thinking about. Forgive the double negative. It's always there. So I think if people could understand that, not that we need you to keep giving us meals or keep doing things, but just to keep checking in on us.
But
really,
we won't turn it away.
We won't turn it away. I love a meal train. I love coffee. Bring it over.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, those are one of the very practical, tangible ways that we can help strengthen the foster families in our community.
Truly.
And forgetting that once the newness wears off, the everyday can sometimes be way harder than the newness.
Because you're sitting in that unknown for those big gaps in between court dates, in between case reviews. And I had a dear friend who my daughter started having a real difficult time going to visit. She was about a little over 1, and it just wasn't like they were like taking her off of me screaming. Like, it just was horrible. And so I was like, this isn't good for her. It's not good for me. It's not good for anyone. So I'm going to start driving her to visits. It was like 45 minutes each way. And the visit was like an hour. And my good friend said to me, would you like me to come with you on those visits? And we'll just sit at Starbucks and and I was like, I would never have thought to ask for that.
Right.
And it saved me on every Wednesday visit day. It was amazing. It was amazing. And then my father-in-law said, I'll watch your son who's not going to visits, and I'll come to your house on every Wednesday. And I'm like, those are the tangible things where you're like, just to be in it with you, just to see like, hey, how can I make this a little bit easier for you? And you might have to ask that question because the foster parent might not know exactly what they need. I never would have asked for someone to give every Wednesday to come sit with me in a Starbucks, but it saved my sanity on those days. Truly. Yeah.
Which leads very well into the next question. Why and how does isolation show up so often in a foster parent's experience?
Yeah, I think there's so much that we can't share or we won't want to share because it's our kid's story. We want to respect it. We want to respect that birth family, which is so good to do. But then there's just also that inevitable, no one can know what it feels like unless they've lived it. And that feels isolating. Even if you have amazing support around you, which I was very, very blessed with, it felt like I needed other foster moms to talk to during it, to have community with other foster moms, because I didn't want to talk about it either. I was like, sometimes I just want to go out, and my kind, loving friends are like, hey girl, how's the foster care journey? I'm like, la, 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 la. I'm like, I don't want to talk about that right now. I just want to be a normal person. I want to not be a foster mom right now. I just want to have fun and
totally relatable.
Yes. And so it's hard. And they're trying to be a good friend. They're like just trying to be supportive. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. So I think it's nice too, when you have foster parents that you can talk to, where you're not having to explain everything, because that can feel exhausting. The system is so wonky and weird, and there's so many things, and even state to state, right? Like that, it's different. So to just have a place where you just could show up and say, ugh, like visits got changed again to this day, and I just can't anymore. And people are not judging you, and they're like, I get it, girl, I understand. That's just huge.
Yeah. Listeners, I hope you heard that if you are doing this fostering journey, or even an adoptive parent journey or a kinship journey, don't do it alone. Find your people. Find people who can get what you're going through and can sit with you, whether you want to talk about it or not, and meet you where you're at and be that network or that support or that tapestry that we can fall into safely, because just as much as the kids that we're caring for need safety, we need safety. So I hope all of our listeners caught that. Hey listeners, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to let you know that all of our prenatal substance exposure training workshops are free this year, thanks to the support of several generous grantors. We are in these workshops learning more about the symptoms and common behaviors associated with prenatal exposure to alcohol and drugs. And we also learn effective parenting strategies across all the ages and stages of childhood. When you go to bit.ly/prenatal-exposure-training, that's bit.ly/ prenatal dash exposure dash training. You can register for one of the workshops that fits your time frame and your schedule. There's several coming up ahead, and registration moves pretty quick. So if you see a timeline that you are interested in, sign up for it fast. And in line with keeping up with all of the latest news and information about when the workshops are scheduled or other events that Creating a Family is participating in, you should subscribe to our monthly newsletter. It's creatingafamily.org/newsletter, and you can choose one of the free downloadable guides that's listed there as our thank you for subscribing. But it's a great way to keep up with everything new and exciting from Creating a Family and what we're doing to support and strengthen families like yours. Let's go back to our interview. I want to talk a little bit about the strain that can happen in a marriage or in a household when a foster family doesn't have that network or that safety net that they're falling into.
Yeah. It's really, I've seen it so many times. And honestly, even in my own marriage, like my husband and I feel like foster care made us so much stronger as a couple. And I just noticed it came to my attention so much how differently we process things. And so even though like we were going through the same situation, exactly, he processes internally, I process externally. And my first thing was like, I'm getting a therapist. Like I need a therapist for this. Like this is going to be, and he's like, okay, go ahead and do you, like that's not what I want to do. I'm just going to keep it in. And he was so supportive to me, but I was the one always like word vomiting about how I was feeling. And he was just like, oh, that's hard. And he would like, leave me a supportive text or, super, holding space for everything I was feeling, and agreeing like, this is how I also feel, but not really, he just kept it in more. And I hear that so much, the dynamic, especially between married couples, that it's like, one is keeping it in and the other one is the one that's like, I got to get this out somewhere. And sometimes it's like, I want to get it out somewhere else. Like, I've said all the things to you and I still need to say more. So that's again, where the community comes in. Yeah. I feel like too, like regular date nights for couples is so hugely important. That was something that was just like, we have to have this because again, you don't want to just be a foster couple. You want to be a couple. Right. You were a couple before you started fostering. How do you find that again? How do you stay in that spot a little bit? Because otherwise it's just so logistical. It's so like, this is all we're doing is like passing like ships in the night of trying to who's getting dinner, who's picking up the kids, who's taking to visit, are you coming to court? Did you take off work? All of those things are important and need to happen, but to find time too. And I hate to even say find time because I know most of what I hear from foster families and what I also experienced was it's how do I find the time? I'm already stretched to my capacity. And so one thing I will say is like, it's not finding time, it's fighting for time. We all have to if it's the dishes don't get done tonight, they don't get done so that I can talk to my husband on the couch for 20 minutes after the kids go to bed and we can connect that way. It's, I'm sending out the laundry or I'm just this week, or I'm going to hire a cleaner once a month, or I'm just not going to care as much really. Like I'm going to let my standard, it's going to be okay.
Figuring out what you can strip away.
Yes. Yeah. Delegate, delete everything that you can. And it's not the time. This is what I always say too. I'm like, foster care is not the time to be the room mom or like the PTA president. It's just, I know some people that fills your cup, but I would just challenge against that a little bit of like, you're going to have so many other things tugging at you. I think it's a time when you can I would just always say like, play the foster care card. I'm like, I'm not available for that right now. Like I can't bring, I can bring paper plates, but I can't like plan the whole party kind of thing, and just being aware of that and being okay with it.
Yeah. One of the strains that I see is the outside pressures always pressing in. And if you haven't developed the skill for saying, no, I'm sorry, I'm not available right now. If you haven't developed the skill of, I need help and here's the help that I need. If you haven't developed the skill of just boiling your calendar down to the bare minimums, especially in those very early days when the placement has first happened, you're going to be fighting so much harder than is really necessary for you to fight. It's one of the reasons that we recommend some form of or some version of cocooning when a family first accepts a placement or when a family first comes home with a newly adopted child. Like just shrinking your world and bringing it down to the bare bones of what's necessary. It's absolutely necessary the other kids keep going to school. It's absolutely necessary that you go to work. But if you can take some time off of work, it's not a bad time to do that. And it's absolutely necessary that you stay plugged into, say, your faith community or any other regularly connecting community that brings you life. Those are the bare necessities.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of it, you can kind of farm out for a little while if you have to and give yourself that gift. Because in giving yourself that gift, you're also meeting the needs of the children while they're adjusting and settling. And our conversation today is primarily focused at supporting and strengthening foster parents, but the parents set the tone for how the whole family adjusts and settles in. So developing those skills, it's so important before you foster if you can.
Totally. Yes. Please.
not trying it out for the first time when you, yeah. So what are some of the patterns that you've seen? You already mentioned one where one tends to be like an internal processor and the other one is an external processor. What are some of the other patterns you've seen commonly in marriages or long-term partnerships when they're under stress in a fostering situation?
Yeah, sometimes I've walked couples through, one parent is really like, yes, I'm here to be an adoptive resource for this child, and the other is not, or not fully on board. And that's so hard. Or another is like, I think we should stay open. I think we should, and the other one's like, no, we should close our home. I'm at capacity. So those are just really difficult. Anytime you're not seeing eye to eye on something huge like that with a spouse and where your heart is so fully feeling one way, that can be super difficult. And your spouse or partner is feeling a different way. You both feel so like, this is what I need. And I just would, encourage people who are maybe in that situation to talk it out with a therapist or have a third party that you trust, especially one, if possible, who understands the nuance of foster care, to be able to really just process through what you're feeling, because so many times there's something else underneath, right? There's some fear from your own childhood. There's some attachment wound that you're carrying that you don't even maybe aren't aware of, right? Or something from one or both of your past that you're just like, this is triggering that for me. And so just being able to have a neutral space and a neutral party to process that with is very important and good. And I also think, as much as people are willing to, I know sometimes people like roll their eyes when I say journal, but I do think it's a really good way to process through outside of a therapist's office, just even a stream of consciousness. What am I feeling right now? It might start out as your grocery list, but set a timer for 20 or 15 minutes and just go and see where you land. And then, do I feel comfortable sharing this with my spouse right away? Maybe not. Talk to a therapist then. Where can I share this? Because it's important for you both to be fully transparent with each other and on the same page.
Yeah. Another pattern we commonly see here at Creating a Family, probably because we are an education-focused organization, is that one parent is much more keyed into the need for education and preparation and ongoing education than the other parent. It's pretty common to have one parent be the one carrying the weight of the educational excellence and the educational preparedness. Are there any other patterns that you see?
No, that's a really good one too. I'm trying to think if there's more. I'm sure there are more.
It's a challenging one to overcome for sure. Yeah.
And even like just one person's carrying the weight in general. I think that kind of happened. My husband kind of said that to me. He's like, I know that you're the one doing the visits every week. I know that you're the one, doing the educational piece, all that stuff. So it's easy because I wasn't working full time and he was. So it was just easy to fall into that. So even just the validation of one partner to another, of like, I see all that you're doing and I really appreciate it. That can go a long way.
That's really good. That's good. How are you seeing the impacts of chronic stress showing up in some of the foster parents that you work with?
Yeah, a lot of it can be a somatic type thing where they're feeling, sick all the time, or they're feeling just like so lethargic and just not well in their bodies, because we know the brain and the body are so connected. That's a big one that I see. Another one that I hear commonly and that I experienced during my foster care journey, if I'm being honest, was just irritability and on edge, hypervigilant type. I remember sometimes I would say to my husband, and this I see with other foster moms too, I'm like, my chest hurts. I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm whew, like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I think I might not be okay. And he's like, you're stressed. And I was like, no, I feel okay. I don't feel stressed. I feel like I'm not having stressful thoughts. I feel great. And he's like, cause it'd be like on vacation. He's like, no, you're stressed. Like, and it's like, I'm the therapist. You're not supposed to know this, but it was true. Like, I was like, you're right. My body is holding this. And maybe on vacation is when my body felt safe enough to show that to me. Right. Like
Right.
it doesn't have to be at the same time that you're experiencing a stressful like court day or a stressful,
Right.
transition plan happening. It's going to show up when it shows up. I definitely see that a lot with other foster mamas, just how it presents in the body and just mentally, the load of it all is what I mostly hear from them.
Yeah. We might also see sleep disturbances, either way too much sleep or not enough sleep. In most instances, it's not enough sleep. Things that are, anxious thoughts racing through your mind and you just can't fall back to sleep, or falling asleep but not being able to stay asleep. Those are some of the symptoms of chronic stress that we should be paying attention to. What are some of the early warning signs that,
Yeah.
this chronic stress is taking a toll and we need to pay attention and do something?
I think that's a great question. One of them definitely is like racing thoughts, or like you said, if you can fall asleep easily, but you're not able to stay asleep and your thoughts are, kind of going a mile a minute. I always ask people, I'm like, check in about your 2 a.m. thoughts, or I say your 2 a.m. or your 20,000 feet thoughts. Those are the times where like your brain is not its best self. And so if you're having a lot of, unless you're a really good flyer, I'm not. So for me, there's 20,000 feet thoughts. Just anytime you're like, okay, my thoughts are racing and they're a lot to do with foster care, or even just like what I have to do, the perpetual like chronic busyness, I think is also another one, trying to really fill your schedule and stay busy so that you're not thinking about it. You're not giving yourself time to process through. Tendency to want to shut down or shut out. If it happens a lot, sometimes again, you don't want to talk about foster care, but if you're really like socially isolating yourself, that's a huge sign. You're just like, I just want to be done. I want to get through my day. And then, like you said, go to bed and be done.
Yes.
Just get done, get through the day. If you're starting to feel that way a lot, those are some definite early warning signs.
Good. So let's shift a little bit to a conversation about the things that foster parents need the most. We've talked about some of the challenges that they face. Let's talk about what they need. If you could give every foster parent 4 basic supports, what would those 4 things be?
Oh, I love this question. Okay. One would definitely be community, like we talked about. First and foremost, I think I've never done anything in my life where I needed empathy. Like I craved it in a way that was foreign to me and new. So for sure, community that gets it. Then I would say therapeutic support, even if it's once a month, check in with a therapist or a coach of some kind.
Yep.
To be able to go into a room and say absolutely anything and not feel judged, not feel like you're a bad person. Because I think that can be a setting that a lot of us default to. I would say permission to have one day of the month where you're not scheduled. There's nothing on the calendar, just a day of, you don't have to do like a face mask and a bubble bath and, meditate that day, but well, you can, but just whatever, just a day where you don't have something on the calendar, because I would look at the calendar sometimes and be like, my eyes are glazing over with there's no space, there's no margin. So start with one day a month. If you could get more than that, amazing. That would be a gift that I would want every foster parent to have. And then the last one is just like permission, like I said, to do something just for you. Just find something that you love and carve out a little bit of space for it. Carve out 20 minutes a week if you can, if you need to start with that. But just something that's just for you. It could be exercise, it could be creative, but just something that makes you feel like yourself again.
Yeah. Yeah. We've unpacked the whole concept of community pretty well, but let's talk a little bit about self-care. You alluded to the pampering and the spa and the things like that, but let's talk about a more realistic or kind of holistic view of self-care.
Yeah, I love that so much. Self-care was actually my Instagram handle before I started the Fearless Fostering, was like self-care bestie. I was like, we should talk about self-care because it's so important. It's so important for everyone, especially important for foster and adoptive parents and kinship caregivers. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's a non-negotiable. It's just how a lot of people are like, yes, I agree. Self-care is a good idea, but how do I find the time for it? Again, it's like fighting for the time for it. So you're like, well, so that might mean that I have to wake up half an hour early, but I think, sleep is awesome and good. And like, don't deprive yourself of that, but think about what that 30 minutes would do for you for the rest of the day. Oftentimes I think we feel like this scarcity mindset of like, well, I'm not going to have enough sleep then. Well, just try it out. You can always try something. And I always say like foster care journeys you're constantly adjusting the sails. So what like self-care might look for you in the beginning of your foster care journey might dramatically shift over the course of it. And that's okay too. It doesn't have to be like this prescriptive thing. So one thing that an exercise that I like to give people to do around self-care is like, make a list of 20 things that you love. It could be like, for mine, I'm like palm trees, hydrangeas, hot coffee, clean sheets on my bed. Like these are real examples from mine, but just don't filter yourself. Just quickly do 20 things that you love. They could be free. They could cost money. Doesn't matter. And then do 20 things that you like to do. Just 20 things. So for me, I'm like going to the movies, reading a book, taking a walk outside, listening to a sermon. Those are things on my list. To think of 20 things for each, and then look at those two lists and be like, okay, these are things that I obviously are meaningful to me, and think about like, when was the last time I did one of those or saw one of those? When was the last time I intentionally, and if it's been a really long time, how can I grab one or two of those this week? How can I grab one or two next week? Mm-hmm. And if you put it on the calendar too, I find that you have something to look forward to. In the book, The Artist's Way, the author talks about having an artist date where it's just like you take yourself out of the house, away from people, just by yourself for 2 hours a week. And I was fostering when I started this, and I was like, there is no way I could do 2 hours a week out of the house by myself. And I was like, there is, if I'm willing to fight for it. Right. And so I would just go to like a coffee shop by myself with a journal and have a coffee. And the fact that it was so restorative when I did it, I did all different things. I went to the botanical gardens one day. It was just things I would never let myself have permission to do. I was finally letting myself have permission to do. And it was a game changer, not only in the moment or the day of or the day after, but the whole week, looking forward to it, knowing that this is a hard moment. This court date's hard. Today's visit went sideways. And at the end of the week or on this day, I have 2 hours that I can just be a human again. And it's really a game changer.
Yeah. Another way to incorporate the habit of self-care, if doing, an hour or 2 hours once a week seems too much, a really accessible way is to have something really small every day that you look forward to. So for me, it's sitting down and crocheting. And so when I get up from my desk and I'm done work for the day, before I start dinner, or before, if I've been really smart and started dinner earlier in the morning, which is a form of self-care for me, I can get up from my desk and go sit and crochet with some quiet music for even if it's just half an hour. And it just resets something inside of me. And I look forward to it every day. Yeah. Some people, it's, a small piece of dark chocolate at the end of the day. Also a lovely treat for oneself.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter how small it is, the act of being able to look forward to it and then realize it is excellent self-care. And I love that it's modeling for our kids that we deserve to treat ourselves well. Mm-hmm. We deserve to take care of ourselves well, because those are skills that when a child's growing up with impacts from trauma and neglect and abuse and chaos, that is not something that they experienced before they came to our homes. And so we have to sometimes really intentionally and tangibly teach them how to take care of themselves. And if we're not taking care of ourselves, they are not going to catch the lesson that we're trying to verbally teach, because we're not doing it.
Totally.
One final interruption, and that's to tell you that we have added several new courses to our free online library of parent training courses. Thanks to the Jockey Being Family Foundation, you can head over to bit.ly/JBF support. That's bit.ly/JBF support to see the full list, and you can take one or all of them today or over the next couple weeks to strengthen and support your family. Thanks for listening, and we'll let you get back to the end of the interview. I think one of the important parts of self-care and sustaining oneself to go the distance in fostering is ongoing education. Of course, you're required to do educational experiences before you foster. And if you're part of the foster system, you are required to do continuing education. But education in and of itself, for the sake of the child that's in your home, is so vital to keep yourself fresh, to keep yourself learning. What is something that a kind of stressed out, overwhelmed foster parent can do to keep learning without feeling overwhelmed?
Mm-hmm. I love any resource that is audio, like this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's so nice. And that was like feedback that I got early on too, was like, can you do a podcast? Because it's like, we have to be able to kind of fold laundry while we're doing the education, but we're able to, do those things. So anything that's accessible on the go, I think is super important, or just while you're, relaxing. I think anything, if you have a video resource, that's also, amazing that you can, if you have the time and space and energy to put that on. But you're right. It's so important. And it really does make our lives easier as foster parents, the more that we know, right? When we start fostering, there's so much that we don't know. And every case is so different anyway. So what can you do to learn more about trauma? What can you do to learn more about, all the things that our kids have experienced, right? It helps us, the more we know, the better we can show up for them. And then that in turn makes it easier for us because we're having more tools in our toolbox kind of thing.
That's great. So what would you say to someone on the other side of that who's not fostering yet and is looking into the fostering space saying, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I've got the chops for that. What would you say to them?
I would say you're a normal human, and I felt the same way. And most women that I talked to who have done it felt the same way. That's normal to feel that way. It is a hard thing, and it's just so worth it. And I would just say this, you don't have to make a decision about foster care. Like, it's not like one day all of a sudden you're like, we're going to be foster parents. You just go one step at a time. You say, I'm going to sign up for the initial class. It's usually like an open house, and they just teach you a little bit about what it might look like to even take the classes. Do you even have the time commitment to take the classes that are necessary to become a foster parent? And maybe along that journey, you say, you know what? We could actually be a respite parent instead of a foster parent. You might have a different, journey ahead of you, or you might start taking the classes and say, maybe we want to do this in another year or two, or, but I would just encourage people, you don't have to make the decision today. You can always keep changing your mind about it, really. And keep thinking about just taking the next step and learning more. You can always back away, but I think being willing to lean in and learn more is the first step. And it's one that I think if more people were willing to do, we would have a way less of a foster care problem in our country, because I think more people would understand, this isn't just like angelic superhumans that are doing this. This is regular people that are just willing to say yes. And so I think that's a huge thing.
You mentioned respite, and I would love to talk a little bit about what respite is. So for people who don't know, let's approach it from that standpoint first. What respite is, and then what does it look like when you're actually doing it? Like what would an everyday respite experience look like for a family?
Yeah, so respite care is a great resource available to all foster parents. Usually it's up to 2 weeks, and you don't have to use them all at once, but you have, that for a year. At least that's how it was in Connecticut where I live. It could be different state to state or agency to agency, but you have this time where you're like, okay, our family or myself and my husband, we need to recalibrate. We need a little bit of a break. So it's like respite carers are people who are licensed to foster, but so their homes have been checked out. They've had background checks, fingerprints, everything like that. And the state or agency has okayed them to care for children just as a foster parent would, but it's just for a short-term time. So it's like 2 days to 2 weeks up to that time. So if you're, sometimes families are going on vacation and a bio family or a judge or whoever says, no, sorry, the child can't go with you. What do I do? Okay, so respite is a good choice for that. And if you're a respite carer, it could look you could say yes or no to any placement. You're not forced into anything. So you could say, I want to do respite care. I want to provide that short-term care and that break for foster families. What you're doing is enabling the foster family to keep going and not burn out. So thank you to all the respite carers.
Absolutely. Yep.
You guys are awesome. And we need more of you. But you can always say, oh my gosh, like our family is going on vacation in July. So July is going to be too much for us to do respite. I can't do it then. And then in August, you can say yes again, whatever works for you. So the great thing about respite care is it's very flexible. You always can say yes or no. And it's a short time. So it works for a lot of people. And that's a good first foray into foster care for many people. They're like, I don't know if I could do a long-term placement, but I know I could handle 4 days or a long weekend or 2 weeks. So I'll try that. And then you can always say, oh, yes, this is for me. I want to do more, or no, I think we're good.
Yeah. And it's really important to know that respite carers have been given the same level of training that foster parents have been given so that they will be equipped to and prepared for what you might think as a foster parent are just big behaviors or, challenging issues. They are prepared. They're trained. They've got the rubber stamp from the agency that says they can do this. And so I think more foster parents should be willing and able to look for respite care and say, yep, that's one of those places where you need to be willing to say, yes, I need some help.
Yeah.
But more people should be willing to step into the respite care space and say, yeah, I can do this for a long weekend. I can do this for 2 weeks every summer or, once a weekend every month. Yeah, I love hearing about people jumping into respite care. And you're right, it can be a gateway to full-time fostering. It doesn't have to be, but it can be because you get that passion and you realize, oh, I can be a safe place for a kid. And it feels pretty dang good to be able to do that in our community.
Yes. And if you are listening to this and you want to support foster parent that you know that's currently fostering, ask them, would it be helpful if I became a respite parent or a respite resource for you? Because I guarantee you they will say yes.
Yes, and amen. Awesome. Great plug. I'm so glad you thought to throw that in. That's a good one. So what is one message that you want foster parents to hear from you today about strengthening themselves and finding that community that strengthens them?
Yeah, I would just say check in with yourself honestly. Right now, like after you're done listening to this, give yourself some time and space to check in with yourself and see how you're really doing. Be honest. It's just for you, but you can self-assess. What do I need right now? One thing that I ask people to think about, foster moms especially, is how am I feeling right now? And how do I want to feel? And what are some ways that I can feel that feeling? Even if I can't change my circumstance. I can't change the case. I can't change the outcome, but I can decide if I want to feel peaceful today. Yeah, it would be great if I knew the next 6 months of my foster care journey. That would make me feel peaceful. But what else would make me feel peaceful would be taking a walk outside, listening to some classical music, hanging out with a good friend over a cup of coffee, whatever it is for you. And I can choose one thing from that list and do that so that at least for a little bit today, I'm getting the feeling that I wish I was feeling, the feeling that I want to be feeling more of. It's easy, I think, to become a little bit of a martyr sometimes, at least it was for me, of like, oh man, my life is so hard. This is so heavy. And it is, that's not wrong, but we also have power. We can also choose something different. And I think that's just an important distinction.
I think it's also easy to become kind of numb to the gap that exists between how I'm feeling and how I want to feel. And when we feel maybe paralyzed by our circumstances or numb to that gap, we don't go anywhere, and then nothing ever changes, and then it just kind of deepens and furthers that sense of numbness. So that advice to stop after this podcast is over and you're done listening, just stop and check in with yourself. I love that. That's probably a good daily practice.
Yes.
Not just for foster parents, any of us who are raising kids who've been impacted by trauma or neurodivergence or prenatal substance exposure, any of those hard things that our kids have experienced, checking in with ourselves. How do I want to show up? And am I actually showing up that way? And minding that gap. That's really good. So in your view, kind of paint us a picture of what you think a strong, robust, vibrant foster family looks like in right now, or maybe 5 years from now, if they start putting all of this into practice and we're all supporting them well?
I love that. I think, it's a family where everyone's voice can be heard and
Mm,
everyone feels safe to share how they're really feeling, and that there's regular check-ins for how are you really feeling. It's easy to get into the day-to-day grind, no matter what each of our kids' stories are, however they come to us, even biologically, but just to have a regular time and say, listen, what do you need right now? How are you feeling right now? And you're creating space for them to feel safe. A practice that I think is really important to that end is for a parent to spend one-on-one time with a child. I just do once a month with my kids. I have 4 kids, and that's what I can give right now. I also work full
right.
time and do a lot of other things. So there's no judgment around how often or how long, but to make it simple for myself so my brain can remember, I just do the day that they were born, like that day of the month. I put it on the calendar as Mom and Sam time, Mom and Josh time. And
Nice.
they know to expect it, and I know to expect it. And then I say to them, okay, what do you want to do? And the little ones are like, let's go to the toy store. I'm like, oh my
Right.
gosh,
Right.
but
Again.
exactly. I'm like, well, this isn't about buying stuff. It's about spending quality time. But just like to have that they expect it. I mean, and they do. My youngest are 5 and 7, and they'll literally be like, whoa, it is the 22nd. It's my mom and Lena time. I'm like, okay.
That's
So
awesome.
I think that's a really good and fun practice. And just to have that time where at least I'm offering you my full undivided attention this
Yeah.
particular moment, so that you can feel safe and I can check in with you and say, hey, how are you doing? Some months you might not want to talk about it. Some months, my teenagers that are older are like, Mom, oh my gosh, we just want to eat this
Stop
burger and
talking.
fries. Yeah. And that's okay too, because that's creating, the safety and the connection, and they know that they can always talk to you.
Yeah, that's great. What about a strengthened foster family in terms of a marriage or a partnership? What would that look like?
I think that's a huge, always adjusting the sails as well. I think checking in with each other constantly, making sure that you have, it doesn't have to be, like a weekly or monthly date night, but just whatever works for you, just whatever you feel. And even to ask that question again, like, how am I feeling in our marriage or partnership? How do I want to be feeling in our marriage or partnership?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, marriage is such a ever changing, relationship. You have to continue to be willing to put the work in. And so I think, being willing to just have those conversations and to be honest in them, to be, sometimes the internal processors are like, things are fine. Like, are they really?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you need? Do you need more time out of the house by yourself? Do you need more connection with friends? Do we need more connection? And just being able to ask that of the other person, and then creating space for it, because you realize how important it is, that the bedrock of the family is that partnership, that marriage relationship.
Yeah. Well, Kathleen, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about how and why foster families deserve and need to be strengthened. I love this concept of building that community and checking in with ourselves. The value of that is inescapable. And when we're strengthening foster families, then we're strengthening kids, and kids can then go on to live these big, beautiful lives that we get the privilege of participating in. So thank you for your time. Listeners, don't forget that May is National Foster Care Awareness Month. And so if you're looking for foster care support and resources for your family, come to creatingafamily.org and check us out. We've got tons of resources that specifically talk about strengthening your marriage, strengthening your parenting, building connection with your kids, all those things that go into building strong, robust foster families. So Kathleen, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing from you again in the future.
Thank you so much.